Hello everyone, and welcome back to Our Eyes on Indie. My name is Finn, and it's my absolute pleasure to bring you our review of Endless Dungeon, the sequel to Dungeon of the Endless, which was a game that really got me into the roguelike genre in the first place. So, the question is, with this, has Amplitude Studio been able to give us another fantastic roguelike, or is this a game that you might as well skip? And I'll be honest, this one's got some good, it's got some bad, and it's going to be a little bit different in between depending on who you are as a person. So without further ado, let's get into it. Look, in between everything else that's been coming out recently, I decided to push this review forward because of the fact that, like I said before, Dungeon of the Endless is a game that really got me into the roguelike genre as a whole. It's one I played a ton of with my friends. I still remember the first ever run I completed and actually made it all the way through and won a run. That is still a moment that I look back to when I think of gaming, and I still revisit Dungeon of the Endless from time to time. So Endless Dungeon has a bit to live up to for me, especially with the fact that it's changing its genre a bit. While it still has that tower defense with Hero's Attitude, it's gone from this more strategic positioning game to a twin-stick shooter, and therefore simpler gameplay. So, off the bat, you're getting rid of a lot of the strategic depth that I loved in the original and replacing it with a more casual twin-stick feel. And to be honest, I still really enjoy it. It's still a lot of fun to go through. The game is definitely easier in a lot of regards than the original was, but I still find the game challenging in some cases. I think there should definitely be some tweaks. For example, one big thing, like I said, this is tower defense based in a lot of ways, and you know exactly where monsters are going to spawn from. And so it's kind of easy for me to just put some turrets in the room where they spawn and then not really worry about it except for a couple stragglers that happen to make it through. It's kind of easy when you're able to do that. If you are able to manage your resources properly, the game can become a bit of a cakewalk. And that's disappointing. Again, there's a lot I like here with the new system, and with the casual, it makes it pretty easy for me to pick up and go, especially playing on my Steam Deck. But then there's a whole nother issue with the Steam Deck that I'll get into at the end of this review. So Amplitude Studio, they're the people that have brought us the Endless series, Endless Space, Dungeon of the Endless, Endless Legend, and Humankind as well. And this game's actually published by Sega, so it's got a bit more of a backing to it than a traditional indie game, but it's still in that indie genre with it being Amplitude, so I still decided it was worth a review, especially with it being a sequel to a good classic indie game. And as I said already, you're playing in a twin-stick with tower defense style game, but what's the plot here? Well, you start off with Sweeper, a janitor on a ship that crashes on this space station, and with both of the pilots dying in the first few minutes of the cutscene there. Well, it's just you alive. You find yourself with a new companion, Zed. You make your way through. You're protecting this crystal bot. All of a sudden, crystal bot gets destroyed, and you're sent to the end of the line saloon here on the station, where the reloader will bring you back again and again. With these people trapped here on this station, no way out. You try to leave the station, stops you. That's the setup. So you're stuck here. You gotta fight through hordes of enemies to try and repair the core and try to figure out if there's a way off this station. There are a bunch of different characters that you get to pick from. All these characters have different abilities and a different starting weapon that they, get to use for a while until you swap it out for something different. And the characters are pretty fun so far. I've been able to play most of them, and I'll get into that in a moment, of which my favorite was Cardi. Cardi is the this little bug, and she's just hilarious, always talking about going around and like, "Hi, I'm here," in this voice. It's really fun and just a good time. I like characters like that. They're designed very interestingly. I also enjoyed the barkeep. He's a lot of fun too, or Blaze. These different characters are really cool. But you go through, you start a run. If you're playing solo, you start out with being able to take 2 characters into a run, and you are able to upgrade to 3. And then with friends, you can have up to 2 of your friends join you on a run through the station. I have not played this in multiplayer because I have no friends. Well, correction, I have friends, they just haven't played the game. But that's okay. So, you go into a run, you get to pick one of 3 starting floors, and then those floors connect to different floors that you can then go to. So you get to pick your route to the center of the station, which is nice for being able to plan things out. It's kind of like an Inkbound, how when you do a deep dive, you're able to pick the boss you're going to fight at the end, and then you get to kind of pick which place you get to go to, with a little more randomness there, of course, than there is here in Endless Dungeon. So it's nice because you can kind of plan out ahead of time, okay, what kind of guns am I looking for? What kind of turrets do I want to research? When you're in a run, you're going to be fighting in that twin stick style shooting with infinite ammo, so you don't have to worry about ammo. It's pretty easy stuff. You're just aiming and shooting and using your abilities. Whether it be Cardi's ability to trap and deal damage to enemies, or Sweeper, who puts out suds and slows, and then you also have an ultimate ability that you'll charge over time, like Shroom's ability to heal everyone in the squad, or Zed's ability to just enhance herself. All these things are cool. I like the abilities. They're a lot of fun to mess with. Some of them feel a bit better than others, like Sweeper's slow feels a little bit unimpactful, especially when you get Cardi, and Cardi just freezes a good chunk of enemies and deals some damage, and you can wipe out the rest. It's a little by comparison. Not a huge fan of that. And the shooting it's twin stick shooting. It's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. There's nothing really to write home about here, but it's fun and casual. So I think you're getting off the bat here that this game is fairly casual. And while I did say it was hard, it's still pretty casual. The thing is, your crystal bot that you have to defend when going through each floor, it's very squishy. It will die very quickly if you let any kind of enemies get on top of it, but stopping enemies from getting to it is pretty easy as long as you just position right. Especially because if you're playing in solo or in multiplayer even, just have different people watch different rooms and it's that easy. You don't have to worry about getting back to the bot. If you happen to be far away when a wave starts, you can just teleport back by holding the Alt key. So that makes it incredibly easy, and I was never stressed, really, about anything, which is a bit of a bummer, especially compared to the original, which always had me thinking, okay, I need this person positioned here, and I need this hero positioned here to prepare for this. But like I said, you just put turrets in the rooms where these enemies spawn right on top of their nests, and then you're practically good to go, especially because there's a new element system in the game. There are a few different elements in the game, with each enemy corresponding to one of those elements. One they take less damage from, and the other they take more damage from. For example, the bugs are weak to fire and resistant to acid. The blobs are weak to acid, but resistant to electricity, and so on and so forth. And so with that, it's pretty easy to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna get the acid turret for the blobs, and then I'll just, oh look, I researched a flamethrower, and now I can have a fire turret to deal with the bugs, and it really roasts them really good. And so they become less of a problem really quick, especially if you understand, oh, I'm dealing with this enemy, let me just go find a research thing through a few doors, and we're good to go. Especially if you're like me and you've played Endless Dungeon, or Dungeon of the Endless before, you understand some of the tricks of resource gathering. To get resources, of which there are 3 different kinds, not including the special resource known as dust, you're going to be opening doors. Every time you open doors, obviously you're getting more rooms. You might find an enemy spawner room and so on and so forth. And as you're doing that, you have the chance of triggering waves if you've already discovered a hive or a spawner. But the thing is, every time you're opening doors, you're also gaining resources. And these resources, you get 4 at a time for each one, unless otherwise modified through generators or different totems that are around the map, and things of that sort. You're then going to be able to use those resources, science, industry, and food, for different things. Science, you're going to be able to use to research and upgrade turrets. So if it's like, oh, I want to research the acid turret, then you're going to have to spend some science, and it will start a wave when you do that. Or perhaps you have food, which lets you upgrade your characters to a new level with different random stat increases that get rolled on a table. And then you have industry, which is the most important because you use it for turrets. Turrets, you are going to put down specific little spots in every single room, And then from that point on, you don't have to worry about spending industry on them. You can repair them by simply hitting them with a melee attack. It heals them for about a quarter of their HP, and then they get upgraded after killing enough monsters, and then you just melee attack them and they're upgraded entirely for free. You don't have to spend any industry on repairing or upgrading. And so that kind of makes the question of industry a little bit lackluster. Again, I found myself getting into triple digits fairly often because the first generator I'd come across, I'd turn it into an industry one, so I was getting 8 per door. And then at the end of every zone, when I would go to move on to the next zone and move my crystal bot, I would just go really quick and open all the doors possible, and then just teleport back to my crystal bot and be good to go. So I would always have enough industry. I never got to a point where I was like, man, I just don't have enough. But maybe some people, if you're just placing turrets left and right and not really being strategic about it, you'll run out of industry. But I never found it to be an issue. And it was, again, kind of disappointing, especially thinking back to Dungeon of the Endless and always being so concerned about, okay, what resources do I have left to go into the next floor of the dungeon, and what do I have for this floor? How much do I need to spend now versus save for later, because that stuff carries over. And while it still carries over in Endless Dungeon, I, again, never felt a sudden lack of resources. I never felt like I was scrambling to get by. And that's even on harder difficulties. I never found it to be too bad. Now, here's the big thing. Well, real quick, let's talk about bosses. Bosses are all over the place. There's the Big Mama that I found to be incredibly boring as a boss. How the Big Mama works is it's in a room and you have to shoot it, surprisingly. But then it will go into an immune state, and then you have to go and find a cocoon to wake it back up. And the whole time this is happening, there are just constant waves of enemies going towards your crystal bot, which I just put some turrets and had my other characters sit there in the room the whole time, is what I did. And that was fine. It was really boring. I was just kind of able to burn it down and didn't have to worry about the wave. No bugs got to my crystal pot during that entire boss fight, so it was pretty easy. Then I had to deal with the shard crawler. That boss was way more entertaining. It chases you around a room. You're just in a singular room. You have to worry about your crystal, but also yourself, because there are also enemy spawners, and then you have to get the crystal to go on the monster when you get the health bar down to go and mine the crystal on its back to actually kill it. That was a fun boss fight. That was a cool boss fight, but like, those two are just two of the early ones you get on. I'm not going to spoil anything else, but they, like, again, it runs the gambit. It goes all over the place. Some are really boring and others are really cool, and it's disappointing to have that. Now, the big thing is I have not actually finished the game, and let me tell you why. Because I decided, with my limited time and with having a full-time job as well as trying to do this, that I wanted to put the game on my Steam Deck and be able to play on the go so I could get some extra time in and finish the game. Well, to do that, first off, you don't just get to carry it over via Steam Cloud. You have to actually go into the settings of the game and activate a setting in there so it carries over. And I was like, okay, once I figured it out, cool, good to go. And I continued to run on my Steam Deck that I had started on my PC, and then all of a sudden, I was done with that run, and it showed that I was missing a whole bunch of my currency for meta progression. I was missing cells, which are used to buy permanent chip upgrades for your characters, as well as the crystal bot. I was missing a ton of scrap, over 1,000 scrap. And that was not good, and it also still showed the cells that I was able to collect from the different maps were already collected, so I was not getting those back. And not only that, but the ones I had already spent were gone. The chip upgrades I had were completely gone. I had upgraded my crystal bot a bunch at this point, as well as gotten a couple for a sweeper, and they were gone. It was just all gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so I had to completely reset my player profile. And so I haven't completed the game because of that, because I've gone back to square one, because all my meta progression was gone. And that's a real bummer, because I was having a good time. Despite the fact that the game's simple and I wasn't having as much of a challenge as I initially had hoped in terms of it's not as strategic. It's still tough. Again, if monsters happen to get to your crystal bot, or another great example is if you want to upgrade your crystal bot by making it go and mine a crystal, those points are hard, and I liked those. I enjoyed those. I just didn't enjoy the slogging through trying to find the next zone or exit door. Those parts were way easier than they used to be. So, with that in mind, and completely restarting because of meta progression, which I should talk a little bit about that. I already talked about you get these chips that do different things, like your bot will heal for a certain amount of health after you complete an area, or a character gets more cooldown or wit, all these things. Like, it's fine. It's not the greatest I've ever seen. And the scrap upgrades are so few and far in between that it's like, it's not enough to keep me interested with that. I know they're probably going to update and expansions later, just like they did with Dungeon of the Endless, but it is a bit disappointing to see what there is right now, and have me curious about how much more could they add, or what are they going to add if it's going to be worth my time. So, with all of that said, here's the big question. Is this game any good? Is it fun? Like I said before, I did still have fun with Endless Dungeon, and to be quite frank with you, I'm still going to play Endless Dungeon. Even with the fact that I had to reset my profile, and you may be telling yourself, Finn, why? Like, you just said that you had all these problems and you had to reset, and normally if I have to reset my profile on something, I kind of just give up because all that progress is gone. Well, the fact is, it's nice and fun and casual. It's the kind of thing I can just sit down and play through really quick. I can stop a run partway through and then come back to it and be excited to go and continue. Because despite the fact that it's simple and it got rid of a lot of the things that I loved about Dungeon of the Endless, Endless Dungeon's still a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm not getting skill trees when I upgrade my characters anymore. Yeah, I don't have to resource manage as much. No, the weapons are not diverse. That is one thing I will say really quick. The weapons are not as diverse. They're incredibly boring. All the weapons you get in a run are just different variations of the starting ones, essentially. Here's a shotgun that now shoots acid or fire or what have you. They're all pretty generic. The only one that's actually really cool is the flamethrower that just shoots flame all around you. That's the only one I found that's really anything different or unique compared to others. All of them just seem to follow a very basic formula, which is disappointing. But I'm still going to play Endless Dungeon, and I'm still going to have fun in Endless Dungeon, despite all of these things. And that's okay for me. I think if you're looking for something deep and more methodical as a roguelike, go and play Dungeon of the Endless, though. I still go back to that game when I really want to think and solve a puzzle. But Endless Dungeon is something you can just throw on, have some fun for a bit, and then come back to later if you want. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to continue. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to unlock all the things. It's just what I want to do because this game is a lot of fun. Again, it's a very different kind. You have to come into it with that mindset of this being a sequel doesn't feel so much like a sequel, so more as a reimagining in its entirety of what the original was. And that's okay for me. The music is also very enjoyable. I like it throughout. The sound design's great, especially for the creatures. They all sound very different. I know exactly what I'm hearing come my way with them. And I gotta give props to the enemy design. I really like the enemy design in this game. It's really cool, especially the blobs. I think the blobs are absolutely terrifying. If you've seen the Grinner, that guy, I would run and scream if I saw that thing in a dark alley. 100%. One of the most terrifying enemies I've seen in quite some time. But again, I have a lot of problems with Endless Dungeon when I'm comparing it to the original, but much like Ready Player One, the movie is a good movie if you haven't read the book. And so treating that movie as just a movie without the book, I enjoy it. But if I consider it a movie based on the book, I enjoy it a lot less. And Endless Dungeon's the same way for me. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to probably go and play it later today. even despite the fact that my save file I had to reset because of that issue. I still love it. I still think it's a lot of fun. And it is definitely one of those where, yes, the $30 price tag may have you going, ugh, that's like almost half the price of a current AAA game. I still think it's a lot of fun. Again, you have to be up for a more casual style and not so methodical, but if you just want a roguelike you can jump into, play for a bit, maybe before you go to work, and then leave it, and then come back later afterwards and not have to think too much, this game is great for that. So, with all that said, Endless Dungeon, I think it's a blast if you're looking for something casual, if you're looking for something a bit hardcore and more on the thinking side like I usually enjoy playing. Go and play Dungeon of the Endless, or Inkbound, or even Raven's Watch. Those are all things that require a lot more interaction and skill compared to this. So, that's our review of Endless Dungeon. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a wild ride. It's one that I still haven't finished, and I hate to review something that I haven't finished, but I wanted to get this out there because I don't know how much time I'm going to have before I'm able to get that finished. Especially with all the stuff that's come out this week alone. We had Wizard with a Gun come out, making my way through that. We had Hellboy Web of Word come out, making my way through that as well. So many things have come out this week. It's hard to keep up with all, but we're doing our best here as this one-man show continues onward. So, with all that said, my name is Finn. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and leave a like there. And if you want to keep up to date with everything going on in the indie world, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We do our best to give you new videos every single week with new reviews, top 10s, and all that good jazz. But with all that said, hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll be here with our eyes on indie.